Thanks everybody for joining. This is Carol from STS. This is the Adult Cardiac User Group call for March 16th. On the line with me from STS, we have Leanne Jones, Addie Dolan, Sydney Clinton, and Melinda. And then our IQVIA team has joined us, Jean, Melanie, Joe, and Steve. STS is back in the office minus Leanne, and Melinda's not here with us. Melinda works remotely, and so does Leanne. So thanks for joining everybody. Just a couple STS updates I'll go through, and then we don't really have any IQVIA updates besides that the known issues have been updated on the platform, and then we'll get into questions. Important dates for adult cardiac: the Harvest 4 reports, they were released on March 14th. They are available on the IQVIA platform. We're going to go over those. I'm going to put it out there. I've had a few emails back and forth questioning values not looking correct or not matching on one report versus the other. Melanie and her team are checking those out now. So if you have a request in to them, again, these reports just came out on Monday. So if you have a request out to them, Melanie is investigating it and will be updating you all as soon as possible. We are at our user group call today. The monthly webinar will be for April 6th. And then I just went through just to our next harvest close, which will be Harvest 2, OR dates through March 31st, 2022. And that will close on May 27th. The opt-out is June 1st for that harvest close. So just make sure you have that marked on your calendar. This last harvest close was, closed I want to say February 25th, if I'm remembering correctly. And I can tell you that there was about 200 sites who had not made any submission 2 weeks prior to harvest close. And on the day of harvest close, there was an issue with the platform that caused a lot of anxiety and causing a lot of stress for sites who were trying to hurry up and get their data in. So if possible, please be sure to try to take advantage of that open submission period and get your data in and cleaned up as soon as possible. I really felt bad for those sites. We worked with them and everybody was able to get their updated data in, but it was a lot of unnecessary stress for you all, for us, and for IQVIA. So please try to get your data in as soon as possible and get it cleaned up. So you don't have to have that happen on the last day of harvest submission. Oh, and then the March training manual is posted. We went over some of those in the some of the updates in the March monthly webinar, which is posted on the STS website under the recordings. So please be sure to check that out if you haven't already watched that webinar or weren't able to join us. And then, as I said, there are no IQVIA updates, but Melanie, did you want to say anything regarding the Harvest 4 reports, or did I cover it well?
You covered it. Yep.
Okay.
We do have some inquiries that came in. So we were reviewing those now from the support team that you all had submitted. So we are actively reviewing those items. And also Carol did note that the updated known issues list is posted to the library. So please take a look there. And if anything comes out of our review regarding the request that you've sent in, of course, we'll go ahead and update that known issues list also once those are confirmed. Okay, thanks.
Yep. Thanks, Melanie. Okay, and then so that's the only thing we have from IQVIA at the moment. They're hard at work checking out emails that have been coming in. The next thing I want to talk about is harvest reports. Usually the user group call, the intention of the user group call is for your questions and for us to answer and to kind of network. But sometimes we don't have a whole lot to discuss, or there aren't a whole lot of questions that we're at the point to share. So I can take this time to do some education or kind of provide more information. I want to see if I can. We're back in the office today at STS. This is my first day back in 2 years, and kind of got a new computer system. So I'm working with 3 computer screens, and I don't know what to do with the little one. So the laptop's just sitting there, but it's like when I move things around, it acts a little weird. Okay, so let's see here. I just wanted to go over, we had a couple questions before regarding the outcomes, regarding the complication section. So I kind of wanted to go over that and talk about the numerator denominator questions that we've had come up, and then address a couple things that I saw kind of going back and forth through emails. In the complication section, I'll just load this report. This is the last analyzed report. I'm going to look into the benchmark section. In the complication section, we have always reported out complications using all the complications except for surgical site infections. We had reported out using the denominator of if there was a complication marked as yes. So complex is the short name. If that was marked as yes, then we use that number of yeses as the denominator for the other complications that fall underneath that section. So I'm going to pull that up. Hold on one second here. I got to get used to I feel like I'm riding a bike with training wheels on right now. I miss, and it's a different style computer than what I normally use. So I got to get used to it. So search, as you can see, this is version 4.20.2. The previous version 2.9 is set up the same way, where we have surgical site infection does not have a parent other than if the patient expired in the OR equal to no. And that's in version 4.2. I don't think we have that same parent in 2.9, but it doesn't matter for this discussion. What we're going to talk about is the numerator and denominator. And you can see this doesn't have the surgical site infections or surgical site complications don't have a parent that in order to get to this field that you would have to mark yes to. So we have surgical site complication, and then if you mark yes, then we have infectious, non-infectious, both. If infectious or both, then you're going to answer if it was superficial or deep for the sternal wound. And this, let's pull up I'm in isolated cabbage. And I think I want to go here under morbidity, mortality. This is the benchmark report. And actually, I think it shows up better I think it's also in the participant dashboard too. Because what I was trying to show is that the infection complications, specifically deep sternal infection, mediastinitis, has a different denominator than the septicemia. Melinda and I, we sit on the phone every Thursday, and we talk about last Thursday or the Thursday before, we took a lot of time and we went through the report, and I can't remember exactly what section we found this in. Let's see if it's this one.
I think it is this section.
Yeah, you're right. This is it. This shows the counts and the percentages.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, everybody. So this page is still loading. When it's done loading, the STS numbers will show up here. But this is where I wanted to show you. So you have the surgical site infection, and then you have, if there's a yes infectious, you can see this yes infectious, and then there's 3 yes non-infectious. The denominator total for the infectious goes down to the deep sternal wound. So this patient this site had 4 infectious surgical site infections. All of those were deep sternal wound infections. That's where you're going to get this yes within 30 days of procedure equal to 100%. When we get down into the other specific complications, when we're looking at re-op bleeding, valvular dysfunction, and all of the other complications, ventilation, renal failure, stroke, dialysis, etc. What we're looking at for the denominator on those fields is this other in-hospital post-operative events occurred equal to yes. And there's been a lot of discussion about why isn't it the total number of patients instead of just the patients who had complications being used as the denominator. Both ways make sense to report it out. Both ways make sense to report it out using either denominator, the denominator for the complications. If you want to see what percentage of your patients who had complications were bleeding complications or were prolonged vent complications or post-op stroke complications. That makes sense, as well as it makes sense as seeing all of your CABG patients, how many of those patients had post-operative stroke. So both ways make sense to report it. Historically, the way STS has reported these complications is by looking at the patients who had complications and then the rate of those complications out of that smaller subgroup. So for example, this site had 4 patients who had new dialysis required. That would just mean that they had, it looks like they probably had 7 total complications coded for this time period. 4 of those complications were related to dialysis issues. So you can see, and what's interesting here, so when I'm looking at dialysis, I don't see this, this denominator is coming from the new renal failure. So they had 7 new patients with renal failure, and 7 of those patients, 4 out of 7 patients required dialysis. So it kind of tells you a story when you're looking through this. If we only report out using the total denominator of all the patients, you're not going to get this granularity to see what total number, what number of these new renal failure patients required dialysis. It would show you, wouldn't show you the whole entire number. So what we're doing at STS is both of these ways make sense to report it out, either using the denominator of the total patient population versus the denominator of those patients that had complications. As I said, we're reporting out just the number of patients who had complications used for the denominator. We are looking at adding in a column that includes all of the patients for that cohort. So all of your CABG patients, how many of those CABG patients had stroke or how many had prolonged ventilation. The number is very, very small when we get into that, and it's not very meaningful, but it will be helpful so you can track your, if you're doing internal quality improvement projects, so you could track those a little bit closer. So that's something I just wanted to show you. And I don't know if the way the screen scrolls, it kind of drives me a little crazy. I don't know if I explained that. Melinda, is there anything else that I left off that you think would be helpful, or did I cover what we had talked about?
I think you covered it. I think that there seems to be a question I see from Karen over here. From what you're talking about, it sounds like there are 9 for that site of rhythm, so it is not 7 total. So the math isn't working for what's being described. I'm not sure what that means, but maybe we need to.
No, it's okay.
review.
It was the 7. So what we're looking at is this, and what's missing here, what needs to be reported out is that complex equal to yes, because if that complex equal to yes is going to be your denominator for the below fields, unless there's another parent to the field, like the new renal failure patients requiring dialysis, which is a child of new renal failure present. But I could figure out what the total number of complications were by looking at, say, for example, this re-up for bleed for tamponade, and looking at what this total, the set 177 and 6 plus 0 equals will be my total cohort. And that number probably is going to carry down. So 183, if we're looking here, it's 183, same thing here, 182 plus 1 is 183. So this is my denominator for, that's coming from that complications equal yes. You can't, and I'll show you what I mean. This re-op for bleed, the choices are yes, no, or unknown. You can only get to this field if you coded complex equal to yes. So whatever your total is for yes, no, and missing, that's going to be your total denominator of the complex equal to yes. We don't report out this field right now, and it probably should be included in this report to make it a little bit more transparent about how many other in-hospital post-operative events occurred. So that's something we can work with IQVIA on. When we're looking at the arrhythmia patients, so rhythm disturbance, it's going to be the 174 is no, and the 9, that's 183. So this was your total number of patients who had complications equal to yes. 174 of those did not have rhythm disturbances. 9 of those who were marked as postoperative other complications had rhythm disturbances requiring permanent device implantation. I hope that helps. So in analysis are the percents of complications over the total patient population or the complication patients. It's over the complication patients unless we're talking about the surgical site infections. The surgical site infections within 30 days, this is going to be over your entire population of those patients who did not die in the OR. The deep sternal infection is a child of surgical site complication. So this denominator is going to be your surgical site infections within 30 days. Yeah, I hear you, Charlotte. So Charlotte's saying she doesn't know about anyone else, but her surgeons are only interested in the number of a particular complication per procedure type, not the total, not the number of complication per the number of patients who experienced postoperative events. I understand what you're saying, Charlotte, and that is, this is the current way that it's been reported out is the way that it has been reported out, but what you're saying makes perfect sense, and I agree. We all agree that both reporting things out both ways is very helpful. So we're working with IQVIA to provide that total number of patients as another row, using total number as a denominator. Was there anything else on here, Melinda, on the reports that we needed to go over that you're getting questions on?
I get questions. The questions I get are fairly simple, like just people needing to know how to run a report or where to find things or the overview where that's located.
Okay.
I think you get all the hard questions.
Well, we can go and I can show folks because I had another email about not able to find how the calculations were performed or how the outcomes are calculated. So I can show that. So under the resource library, this is the national report overview, and this is going to provide you with your information on the what's reported out, when it's available, and how we do the calculations. And then it also provides information on the mortality thresholds and NQF thresholds. This is a really important document to review. So if you haven't done so, please take a chance to review it. And if you have questions on it, you don't hesitate to reach out. There's a lot of really good information in here. Talks about like groups and how we determine like groups. It talks about regional groups and how we determine regional groups. One question I got recently was they hadn't realized that a specific state could be a region, and this is how it's been done for many years. We have these regions, but if each of these states within the region has a large enough population, we don't compare them to the entire region, then we compare them to the states in their hospital. So you would see that your region, for example, you would see that your region is Massachusetts. If your state had a large enough population to have a meaningful comparison, then we would just use your state. If it does not, then we compare you to the entire region, which would be called the New England region. So it goes through what we do for, this is how we handle inclusion exclusion criteria, and then different checks that are performed, how risk adjustment is performed. The 2018 model went into effect with version 2.9 go live, which was July 1st, 2017. So it talks about that. It talks about that model and the changes that occurred there. The reason why all this is important is because you get questions from your surgeons, and it's helpful to understand what we're doing. The outcome risk models, and then provides a description of those models, of what the endpoints are. So the endpoints are things like operative mortality, permanent stroke. They're all of the specific complications that we look at to make up the composite. And then major morbidity, which is any of those above complications or operative mortality, and then also short or long length of stay. There's a lot of really important information in here that will help you understand it a little bit better. kind of like the next level. Well, you know how we calculate BSA, what happens if ejection fraction is missing or less than 10. If values are missing, how do we imputate those values? So I suggest this, and then it gets more into how the NQF measures are calculated and things like that. So it's a very useful document. It's the first one here in the library. So please check that out. The other thing that's in the library that the sites find interesting, or we also get requests for it, is this composite quality rating summary. And if you're not familiar with it, I think it's a good document. This will tell you for this last harvest where we had star ratings, which was harvest 3, this will tell you the number of sites who received 1, 2, or 3 stars for each of the composite measures. So you could see if you received 3 stars, you could see that you're, among the elite of the sites participating in the database. I know what else I wanted to show you. There was a question I saw come through about when the reports are printed for harvest 2 and 4. Now this was harvest 4 that was just released, OR dates through September 30th. And when you go to print the report, you're seeing on your first couple pages the star ratings or the quality summary documents, and the dates on those are June 30th. The quality ratings and the quality rating details, the star ratings, they're only updated twice a year, harvest 1 and harvest 3. So we keep them available. We don't hide these during the harvest 2 or harvest 4 reports. But when they print, you're going to see this STS period ending with June 2021. Harvest 3, as you all know, harvest 3 contains dates through September 30th, which is what you see up here at the top of this report. So it's just something to get used to the way it works. We don't want to hide your star ratings. We don't want to hide your rating trends over the year. So just be aware that when you go to print your reports, your last star ratings are always going to print, and then the most recent report. So you would have, again, your star ratings are going to say whatever the most recent one, harvest 1 or harvest 3. This is harvest 3 from 2021. So that will print, and then it goes into your NQF measures, which are updated now every harvest. So you'll see the different date at the top there. Okay, let's go over to questions because I think we have a few. This is from Tiffany. If no mention of pneumonia history and risk factors, is it more appropriate to choose no or unknown? Melinda, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, it's more appropriate to choose no because, and we have instruction in the training manual about that. So for example, when you have a history and a physical that exists in the medical record and the values are not specifically addressed in the documentation, you're supposed to code no. So if there's no mention of history cancer, you say no. When you code unknown for a situation like this is if perhaps they say the patient has a history of cancer, but you don't know when it was, you would code unknown because there's a 5-year period there from the history of cancer. Unknown is also used in situations where there's you don't know any medical information about this particular patient. Family's not available, the patient can't tell you, or there's conflicts in the record. But the answer to this specific question would be no. We'd code that as no.
Thank you. Thanks, Melinda. Melanie, there's a question here that says, should we hold off on distributing the reports to our physicians?
I wouldn't say to hold off. It's, again, the items that have come in for review, we need to determine whether or not if it impacts all sites. If it impacts all sites, then it will be listed. It's going to be updated on the known issues list that's in the library. So at this point, I'm not going to tell you not to distribute it to your physicians. I just would recommend that you do a review of it. And if there are items that you are questioning and you see that it's not reported on the known issues list, then please contact our support team so we can take a look. But again, I would leave that up to you after you do your review.
I agree. Thanks, Melanie. And I want to go back. So we really do need to have the total number of cases. So I think, let me show you here.
I think
I
she's,
agree.
she's talking about on the risk adjusted report. It's only appearing on the demographics
Oh,
for total
okay.
number of cases. It doesn't show for each section. So that's the ask. And Pat, we did receive that request, so we have it logged, and that's an item that we have to bring to STS for them to give the approval.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
For pre-op medications, if a patient is on 2 beta blockers, would you choose other anti-anginal, or is that reserved only for the meds not covered in the other anti-anginal categories?
So that category is reserved for other meds. And off the top of my head, the only other anti-anginal that you'll see very frequently is Renexa. Just put that in your little heads for a while. Renexa is a very common other anti-anginal that is used. But if the patient's just on 2 beta blockers, that you already have covered that in the beta blocker category. So you would just code that in the beta blocker category.
Perfect, thank you. Can you go over AFib analysis? I'm not sure what the question is on that one. Which dashboard do you want me to look at, Vicky? Just let me know and I'll go there. Can we get the total number of post-op events? So yeah, so what I was gonna try to show here, and I don't know if this is gonna work or not, but let me pull it up and see. Yeah, so is the 534 the number of patients, and out of those 183, exactly, that's what I was just about to show. I don't know if you all can see, I think D. Holland, I don't know if you all can see the comment in there, but that's what I was gonna try to show. So it kind of tells the story of, and you do have your total number. It's just not it's not in your face. So I know my total number of cases is 534. Out of those 534, I know that one of those patients had a reintervention for myocardial ischemia. So I know that, right? The percentage is not using the total number of cases, it's using the number of complications equal to yes, but the information is all here. I know, right, number of cases 534. I wish I could make this bigger, Melanie. Is there a way to make this pop out?
You can. You hover your mouse right in the, yep, you can do maximize. There you go. Maximize. Yep.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so did everybody see how I did that?
Yeah, show it one more time.
Yeah, I right clicked and then I did maximize visualization and then it made it bigger. And I'm just
And you
gonna
can zoom in if you needed to. I'm not sure. I know it's kind of, no, from your browser, if you go right over to the 3 dots in the upper right corner, where your name, right there, and then zoom, and you can make that a little bit bigger if you'd like. So
look at
there
that.
you go.
Look at that,
All
everybody.
right,
Learning
then
new
you can
tricks.
see.
Okay, so I know that my total number of cases is 534. Out of 534, I know that 4 of those had infectious surgical sites. 3 of those had non-infection. This is 7 patients. When I go down here, I know that, right, I'm infectious, deep sternal wound infection. That's a child of infectious, right? If we chose infectious, the choices are deep sternal or superficial. So we don't report out the superficial. So what I'm looking at here is surgical site complication, yes, infectious, non-infectious, both. This is, I coded yes, infectious. This matches my, see if I can get these both on one screen here. Hold on one second. Uh-oh. Okay, so I have surgical site complication, right? That's gonna match this one. No, 527. I coded yes as infectious 4 times. I know that if I coded infectious, my choices are superficial or deep sternal wound. We only report out the deep sternal wound. All 4 of my patients fell into that deep sternal wound category. Okay, now I'm gonna go down here to re-op for bleeding. I know that my total number of cases is 534. Re-op for bleeding what we're not reporting out and what's missing from this graph is this complications equal yes. And if we report that out, this would flow a little bit better and make a little bit more sense. But if you're looking for the total number of re-op for bleeds out of your total case count, you have your total case count of 534. You have 6 patients who had a re-op for bleed. So if you're looking for your total population, that is also here. It's 6 patients out of 534. So the story is here. It's just, we tell it in a way right now that's a little bit granular, right? I can see both options. I can see the denominator of this 534, my total population. And then I also know the number of patients who had complications is going to be that 6 plus 177, because re-op for bleed over here, re-op for bleed is a child of complications equal yes. So the only way to fall in the denominator for re-op for bleed is to have this field coded as yes. So I have re-op for bleed, yes and no, that's 183. This is going to be my total for complications, that 177 plus 6. So hopefully that's a little bit more helpful, but yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to show, is the 534 is the number of patients. Out of those 183 had complications. Out of those 183 complications, 6 of those were re-op for bleed. So it makes a complete sentence when you're telling the story.
And so, Carol, that 3.3% is out of the 183.
That
That's what you're
3.3%,
getting,
yeah,
that number. Yeah.
that's correct.
Okay.
It's out of the 183 because you have the 177 making up the other 96.7%, right? You have the 6 patients and the 177. That's your total population.
Mm-hmm. I
6
think
of
that's
those.
where some of the disconnect's been. People are looking at this and they're looking at the total number, and then they're looking at the yeses and they're like, wait, this doesn't equal 3.3. Do you see
Yeah.
what I'm saying? So I
Oh
think
yeah.
this is a great explanation that you're explaining this. I think it's
Yeah,
great.
I think what's missing here, what we need to report out, is this other in-hospital post-operative events occurred, yes, because that
Mhm.
actually is going to complete telling the story. It's going to be, what would show here is other in-hospital post-operative events, yes, equal to 183, and then no equal to whatever 183 is minus 534, which would be your complete breakdown of all your patients.
So Jane Ann wants us to look at the strokes too while we're doing this.
So yeah, we can do that. And it strokes a little bit different, right? Because we started reporting it out differently in 4.20 previously. So we're the screen on the left is the 4.20 data collection form where we only report out yes or no. Previously in 2.9, we reported out yes hemorrhagic, yes ischemic, yes undetermined. In 4.2, we combined all these yeses to just be the single yes in 4.2. Why can't I find it? This one. Does that make sense? So what I'm looking at here is the entire report, this last reporting period. This site did not, and I don't know if we're already mapping these or not. I think we're still reporting them out individually for 2.9 and previous, and then 4.2 is just going to be this yes code. So what you see is, let's see if we can this a little bit better. Whoopsie. So what you see is you have that, again, here's that 183, right? That's going to be your total complications. That's missing out. But 3 of your patients, remember you had a total count of 534, and 3 of your patients had stroke. So your total stroke rate is pretty low, right? It's going to be 3 out of the 534, your total number of cases. So you had 3 strokes out of 534 for your total population. And then out of the patients who had complications, strokes only made up 1.6% of your complication rate.
Right, and we have to leave the hemorrhagic and the ischemic and the undetermined type on this report because prior to 4.2, that's how we were reporting them. So that's why people are seeing that.
That's right, yeah. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful. Is there a document explaining how to get the numerators and denominators? Yes, for the NQF process measures, duration, selection, and timing of antibiotics. So I don't know that we have all of those. I'm going to go over here to the sts.org registries, STS National Database, adult cardiac, and then under 4.20.2, under additional resources down here, you'll have your NQF endorsement guide, and this will provide you, and I don't know, I don't think we use all of those. We just have
I don't think the antibiotics is on this guy.
just the timing. Um,
Yeah, just the time, just part of it, not all of it. There.
Yeah, so just this one is what we have for NQF is the timing of antibiotic prophylaxis for cardiac surgery patients. And this document will explain numerator, denominator, and exclusion criteria.
Yes, I send this document out to a lot of people. This is a great document for you. I've got this downloaded. I love this document. It's a great document.
Thank you. A guide with a breakdown of instructions, explanations of complications, and mortality results would be helpful. So I think to see what we can do. That's kind of the reason of the webinars is so we can walk through things together like this and ask questions live, because sometimes things pop up. Like Melinda and I had worked on that together, and it kind of made a little bit more sense after we walked through it, and now it's even making more sense after being on the webinar with you and answering all your questions. We'll see what we can do to come up with an explanation, but I would recommend referring back to this webinar if you have questions on reading it again. But thanks, Deb, for the suggestion. Robin says, would like a review. Oh, am I skipping questions? Would like a review on how to download safe print only parts of the report, not all 234. Are you up for that, Melanie, or want to do that on the next one?
I don't have it logged in, but if you want, let's see. Let me pull up a test environment, and then I can share screens.
Okay, I'll go on and let me know when you're ready.
Okay.
Is there a document that shows the weight of risk factors in each risk model? That's a great question, Peter. So there are coefficients associated with the risk models. Some of those coefficients are dependent on other variables within the model. So we do have a coefficient sheet. It's not as simple as saying preoperative stroke is always going to be weighted this way for this risk model. It might depend if that patient has diabetes, had a previous stroke, had hypertension, and all of those things combined would have a different weighted risk outside of somebody who had 2 or 1 or multiple other complications. So I'm happy to share the coefficient document with you, keeping that in mind that that it's a covariate model, meaning that they're dependent upon other things within the model.
Yeah, and I give that out a lot too. So whichever email you want to send your questions to, we can get that document, and I pass out the articles too about the development of the risk model that kind of helps you understand it a little bit better.
Good, thanks. Thanks, Melinda. Can you please show us where to find the 3-year composite data and then the data for the year quarter? Okay, let's see what we can do. And I agree, I had a hard time had a hard time with this too. So the 3-year composite data, now remember, this is going to be harvest 4 I'm showing you, but the last star rating was harvest 3. So the star ratings are not going to be based on the most recent data. That's just how the star ratings are. So the cabbage is this is the first time we went to the 36-month cabbage. And I'm going to try to answer your question, because I had a hard time trying to find out my trying to break it down. This is just going to show you the total 3-year time frame that went in to your data there. Where did I find it? Hold on. So we have and this was something that kind of threw me for a loop, is we're missing what's not on here is the MySite 2018. which would make up the last half of 2018, makes up the 36 months of data in analysis. So we're only reporting back what DCRI gives us, and apparently they're not giving us the 2018. They weren't giving us the first 6 months of data that was used in analysis. So we have MySite 19, 20, and 21. And then your like group. This is the risk adjusted data summary. When I go into, that was this one, risk adjusted and regional outcomes. When I go into the benchmarked report, if we look at the morbidity and mortality, and I agree, it was a little tricky to try to parse this out because it's all contained together. We have, you'll see the 2018, the 2019, 2020, and 21. So remember, this was harvest 3. Actually, this was, yeah, harvest harvest 4 of 2021, which is data through September 30th, 2021. And harvest 4, so this is going to include MySite for 2018. That's only going to be the last 3 months of 2018, all of 2019, all of 2020, and the first 9 months of 2021. So it doesn't give you the whole years for 2021 or 2018. Let me see here. So I don't know if that's helpful. The only other thing that I can think to use to recommend you to view is the longitudinal report. And this is supposed to be updated to match your risk adjusted outcomes. This is the most recent analyzed data set. And on this longitudinal dashboard, you can break things down by quarter, by year, and I'll show you how to do that. And it does provide your ODE. So you have your aggregation here. You can look at it quarter or month. So if we wanted to look at it by quarter, and we wanted to look at just isolated cabbages, and just check all your other filters, I think, I'm not sure exactly, but I think this is just going to show you that year. So I wanted to look at 2020, broken down by quarter. I'm looking at my isolated cabbage cases, and then looking at all of these, all quarters for that year, all months. And then here are the endpoints. So if I wanted to look at renal failure for that time frame, these are case counts, total patients, your eligible patient, and then outcomes. Renal failure observed versus the STS predicted. So your site observed is going to be the blue line, the STS. So this site is performing better than the STS predicted risk. Right, your observed is better than your expected. So STS risk models, we're expecting you to perform like this green line, and you're actually performing like the blue line. Your ODE outcomes for risk failure. So STS, the black bar is STS, it's always at 1. So this site is your observed to expected is less than 1, which means you're performing better than expected. And then your risk adjusted rate site and STS Insight. I hope that helped a little bit. If medications are not well documented as to last dose at home on an elective case, such as an ACE-ARB within 48 hours or statin within 24 hours, do we answer unknown?
Well, you have to see both of these medications have a time frame. Okay, so you have to know whether that the ACE was given within 48 hours or whether the statin was given within 24 hours. So if you don't have any proof that those medications were given within that time frame, but you know that the patient takes the medication, then I would answer unknown. I know he takes this medication, but I don't know if it's within that time frame.
Thanks, Melinda.
You're welcome.
Is any re-op risk adjusted or is the NQF re-op risk adjusted? We do risk adjust for reoperation. It's not any reoperation, it's the NQF reoperation that's risk adjusted. I strongly agree with Charlotte. Surgeons want to know, right? So we just went over that. You have your full denominator there, and then you have your cases. You could tell it both. The story is available when you look at that. I came in late. The report is still repeating elements that do not fit on one page, so the next page has all elements. Oh, Melanie's
Yep,
typing
you're
in that
working.
one.
Yeah, you're
Thanks.
working on that.
Sorry, I just saw that.
No worries.
Okay, and then Susan says, I often need to open multiple reports before finding the one that shows what I'm looking for, and it's very slow going. Is there a report guide examples, anywhere examples, or anyway, a brief description of thumbnail of report could be attached to report selection site to facilitate proper selection the first time? Yeah, I agree. I have a little bit difficult time not knowing what's underneath. But I think, yeah, I'm not in here very often, not as often as you all are in here. Maybe what would be helpful, maybe one of the things we can work on is looking at each of the reports, like say I'm underneath the risk adjusted dashboard and looking under that dashboard, underneath the quality ratings, quality trends, right? Quality ratings, quality rating details, trend details, and maybe putting, and I don't know if it's possible, something we can talk to IQVIA about for an elaboration is if you hover over it, what it will show you what's under quality ratings. This will say your site star ratings, quality ratings details. This will provide you information regarding cases that made up your quality rating details. So perhaps that would be helpful. That's a great idea.
Carol?
Yeah.
I just wanted to let you know
Am I
that
going to
I
get in
have.
trouble?
No.
Oh.
The printing. I know we're running out of time, and I
Oh,
do have to
sure.
jump off. But
Yeah, let
for
me
the
stop
printing.
sharing.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
All right, hold on a moment. And are you able to see my screen? Report dashboard showing?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that everyone is using the option to export the report by using this button. I know that there's another option underneath the file menu, and you'll see that there's an export, but this does, we have seen where it does cut certain areas off of the visual or the report table. So we ask you not to use this option. If you can go ahead and use the option to export the report. And once you do that, it will export to PDF. And I have a sample PDF up now. And when you go in to choose the option to print, so here's the print dialog, you'll see that there is an option under pages to print. You can use the pages option, right? By default, I believe it goes to all. And what you can do instead of printing all of the pages, because that's what I'm hearing, it's like, we don't want to print all of the pages. We want specific pages. You can do that by using this option. And as you can see, if I wanted to specify the pages that I wanted to print, you can put those page numbers in here. And as you can see, it gives you this mini preview. I know it's kind of small. And you can see the pages that you entered in here. Those pages will appear in the preview here. Okay, so whatever, or if there's a page range that you want, you can put in that page range. And you can print those specific pages if you don't want to print the entire report. So I just wanted to point that out. You're able to use that. Okay, so I'll stop sharing.
And then there's a note from Donna. It says both options for printing PDF still truncate the column width, cutting off data.
I haven't seen that. So Donna, if you are still experiencing that, then please contact our support team so that we can take a look to see what's happening.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 5 more minutes left. Why does substance use and counseling say it's NQF measure? NQF for whom? It's not on the NQF endorsed document you showed. So NQF asked us to add that measure into our database, and it looks like they are no longer. It's no longer an NQF endorsed measure, but they asked us a while ago to add it in. So we started collecting it for them. We are not reporting it out to them. And then your other question, it says, do I understand it correctly that if the patient was not screened for tobacco, drug, and alcohol, the response is no? Yes, that's correct. Or if they are screened for all three, but no counseling was given, then we also need to, for alcohol use 6 times a week, we also need to answer no. Yes, that's correct. And then NA is only used when it's not appropriate for medical reasons. And yes, that's correct.
Yeah, and I think that just to add to that, It's not an NQF measure for STS. It's a CMS measure. And as Carol just mentioned, they ask us to add that in, and we don't report that out. So I would say I wouldn't worry too much about it.
Yeah. And then you're right. Yep. I didn't scroll down far enough. The medication for selection of antibiotic and the duration of antibiotic are available on this NQF document. Thank you. The longitudinal reports are difficult to print. We must download each category and there are no headers. Maybe if you could put that into the IQVIA mailbox, we can follow up with that with IQVIA and see how we can get that information added to the reports to print and have them print a little bit better.
Is there no way to export? Is there a way to export that longitudinal report, just like Melanie just showed us how to do the other one?
Let's see.
Yeah, there is an
Okay.
option to export.
All right, because that, you know, surgeons love graphs. They love graphs. So they like looking at graphs. So
Yeah, let's see what happens.
anytime I could do something, show them something like that, they get excited.
Yeah. I guess you would just select your filters and your time range and then export report. Is that right, Melanie?
Tara's on mute. Yes. And I'm not seeing where you're sharing, if you're sharing.
Oh, I'm not
Carol.
sharing. Am
Yeah.
I? Sorry about that. How's that?
I see a pretty background of trees.
Do you see the right screen? Do you see the reports now?
No, I
No, we
just
see a trees and a
trees.
bridge.
Oh, brother.
and a bridge. Yep.
Okay, let's see. How about now? See what happens when they
Yes.
give me too many screens? Okay, so I exported, I just went to export report. I had selected my parameters 2019, changed this to quarter, and then it downloaded into a PDF.
Nice.
And it's giving me all of my outcomes, all of the tables down at the bottom, right? All of the endpoints, and it has them labeled. So I know this is reoperation, quarter 2019. The only thing I don't see here is the other filters that were selected, but I don't see that this is, I might just be missing it, but I don't see that this was isolated cabbage. Unless it's on the last page. Let's see what's there. No. So maybe that's something we could look into, Melanie.
Wait, sorry. I was answering some questions.
That's okay.
When
I
we
don't
export,
yeah, I don't see that this is saying, this is telling me. So I exported its isolated cab.
oh, we have an enhancement. No, we do. We have an
Okay.
enhancement to include that in the export. I believe, yeah, we did receive that request.
Okay, yeah, that looks like the only thing.
Yes.
I don't see the filters.
The
So
filters,
that would
that's
be
it.
something.
Mhm.
Yeah, I thought that we had brought, okay. Very good, thank you. Yeah, you'll have to export it as an additional report. The complication rates in the outcomes report are based on total patient population per procedure. No, that's not correct. So I suggest reviewing this webinar when it's posted in a couple days from the STS website. The complication section for surgical rate for surgical infections is going to be your total complication or total patient population. The specific outcomes like prolonged ventilation, renal failure, are going to be your, the denominator that's being used in the report is the total number of complications. And then that patient, the number of complications that were made up of that specific endpoint. What is the drink limit for alcohol when a patient should be counseled?
Well, that depends on your hospital policy. In this NQF measure that we're talking about, CMS allows the hospital to determine the process of screening and counseling. And you just have to have a process set up. So your facility would have to determine that amount of alcohol. There are some references out there in the literature with screening tools that hospitals can use to set up things like that.
Great. Thanks, Melinda. Okay, and Melanie's answering Karen's last question in there, and I don't have anything else, and we're right at time. So thanks everybody for joining. I hope that this was a helpful webinar. Thanks, Melinda. Thanks, Melanie. Hope you all have a great rest of the day. Oh, you're welcome, Cyrus. All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye.